Hi, I'm BryCox with BryCoxWORKSHOPS.com. I had a question on focus and focus issues and, well, things being out of focus. This actually comes from quite a few photographers asking it quite a few different ways. So before we get to that though, make sure however you're watching this video that you subscribe, you like it, whether it's on YouTube, iTunes, Facebook, whatever. And check out my website. Keep in mind I have a lot of full courses on my website at BryCoxWORKSHOPS.com. All right, so I have a sample camera here just to show you. And here is one of the big questions is, everything is always slightly out of focus on the eyes, but like the nose or flowers, if it's a bride, they're always in focus, like what's going on. And so that's typically a Canon issue because a lot of Canon cameras, now keep in mind too, Nikon and Canon have a gazillion models and it's impossible. Like when I do a workshop, people bring me a camera and they go, help me do this. And I go, heck, I don't know your camera. I wish Nikon and Canon made all of their models work the same, where the buttons were in the same spot and their shutter speeds. And I'll say, well, how do you change your shutter speed? And they go, what do you want to do? And I go, I want to change your shutter speed. Yeah, but what do you want to do? Do you want to make the picture brighter because you do this? I go, I want to adjust the shutter speed. Where's your dials, right? Because it's different on every camera. So for your camera, you got to check. But typically for Canon, they have a setting. It's called like close proximity focus, which means, yeah, you're trying to focus here, but its sensor goes, something is closer than here, so I'm going to focus on that, and I'm going to override you, the artist. And the reason why it does that is for stupid people. That's what it does. All the autos on the camera are for stupid people. The trick is to get away from all the autos. So why is it for stupid people? Because it says basically, if there's a background, trees, mountains, and there's a person in front, what do I want to focus on? Whatever's closest, people. But let's say you change your lens and you want something kind of a long lens and you're zooming in on the face. Now you've got a lot of contouring and texturing of the face, right? You want to focus on the dead tack center eyes, sharp eyes. And what happens is the nose is closer. So you got the nose in focus right here and the eyes are out of focus. So you want to turn off any of those kind of auto, like close proximity, override, bullcrap stuff. Turn all that off. Turn all that off, right? So that's one of the biggest problems first is like brides holding flowers. The flowers in focus, the bride's out of focus. Anything like that, and that'll solve that. The next thing you want to do is, most of the time, there's also like there's what's called like a grid focus, right? There's all the dots, and you can choose what dot for what items in focus. Way too hard. I usually turn all that off and just have center dot focus. But what that means is I want to focus on something and then recomposite my shot and take it. Right? Just how cameras have always worked for like 100 years is you focus in the center and then redesign, recomposite your image, take the picture. So sometimes those dots are handy, but the reason why that's a really slow way of working is because then you got to sit there and you're like looking through the camera and then you're like, I want this thing in focus, and so you got to go with the menu. You're back here going boop, 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 boop. You're moving to that dot, and then you push the focus, and then you take the picture. And then what happens is, like, for me, my general rule of thumb for creativity is you're always shooting a different picture every single time. You're changing your focal length. You're changing from this to that. You're changing. So what? Then you go from this to that, and now you got to move the dot to their face. So you got to go boop, 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 move that little dot over. No, it's way too hard. So I just use center focus only. Center focus. And what I do is I focus on the eyes, change how I want to frame it, take the picture. And so you can reframe by holding the focus button halfway down. Or what I like is the auto lock button. And it's AEL or AFL for auto exposure lock, auto focus lock. And you hold that. Obviously, I'm not locking my exposure because everything's manual, right? Because we're proficient in our profession. We're professionals. So everything's manual, so we're not adjusting our exposure, but what we are doing is locking that autofocus. So I can hold my focus button down, lock on those eyes. I go focus, lock, focus, lock. The other way you can do it is to reprogram your back button to be focus and then turn off the half button, the half trigger, right? So that doesn't focus. So then when I back button, so a lot of people like back button focus for this very reason, is they will find the eyes, boop, find the eyes, focus with their back button led up, and now the camera will not focus, and it won't try to focus, and it won't override when I take the button with the trigger. So that's another way of doing it. So either half button focus and lock, or focus, let up will lock, and then take. Right? Couple issues with focus that way. And then the last thing is using a long lens with a really shallow depth of field. This is a very common problem. And I had a question on this week. And this is like typically say like an 85 millimeter lens, usually like 1.2, 1.8, something like that, which means your depth of field, and this is the other problem with focus too, is people don't understand depth of field. Depth of field is how much depth out in the field is in focus based upon your f-stop. So the bigger the number, like f22, f16, right, that means the smaller the hole, which means more focus light, which means more depth. So if I want to get somebody in focus and the background, the mountains and all that in focus, I need a big depth of field, like f16, f22, something like that. However, if I only want somebody in focus and the background out of focus, I want a big wide open f-stop, and I have a whole video, free video for newbies on f-stops if you don't get that. Right, so it'd be like something like 5.6, 2.8, 1 point something, 1.8, 1.2. And what that does is you get a lot of scattered light coming through your lens, and that's going to create out of focus backgrounds. So let's say you're photographing somebody, a model or whatever, and you got an 85, and you're focusing on someone's eye, you think, and you go like this, and you use that center focus, and you go up, center, focus, and you come back down. That distance sometimes will shift, right? Let me set this camera down, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So here's me and my camera, here's the model, and that distance, so I focus here, and then I recompose, and what happens is that focus is now, that focal plane changes a little bit, and so now the eyes are out of focus and the nose is in focus. So that is an instance where you have to use the little grid, and you go, this is where I want it, don't move model, keep that expression, and you got to move up the little dot to the eye and then take the picture. And of course that's exaggerated. The closer you are, it's less of an issue the further away you are, because the further away you are, you can see how that angle, right, just diminishes the effect of that focal plane. So, a couple issues there. All right, keep all those in mind. One, f-stops in terms of depth of field, how close you are to somebody, what kind of lens you're using, whether you're using grid focus or whether you're using just center focus, or whether you're got like some auto feature like a lot of Canon cameras have, which is that proximity close focus. A lot of these things will kind of help with focus issues. And here's another big thing, which I won't get into in this video because it's a lot more complicated, which is lighting. Lighting is going to affect your focus and your ability to create or control your depth of field, which is a great reason to understand flash and strobes. If you're shooting in a studio and you're using continuous light, you just do not have the control or the power as you do with strobes, but strobes create complexity. Same with strobes on location, strobes at a wedding, right? Flashes, all that is more complicated, which means, yeah, you need to watch my course. My entire lighting course. It's only 3 hours. It's actually very intensive. It covers quite a bit, both inside, outside. Check it out on my website, BryCox, BryCox, workshops.com. Send me your questions, America, and until next time, America.